Fireside Wisdom in 3, 2.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Fireside Wisdom, episode 6. Tonight, we have Tim Berzins, Kylie Reinhold, myself, Paul Rickards, hopefully discussing the deeper parts of gratitude and what those things mean for us. And throughout this discussion, I think we're going to have some beautiful moments. So bear with us. Great to have you back. Here we are.
Excited to go.
Excellent.
Beautiful. It's going to be a good one. So we want to talk about gratitude.
Yes.
Like you talked about. We've been contemplating how we wanted to, pick the content that we wanted to talk about, and I really like the idea of contemplating words. For the past 3 or 4 years, that's been a big practice for me, is picking a specific word and really feeling into that word, and even using it, putting it up against other words. So I think one of the examples I gave you was the difference between discernment and judgment. And so if you understand that discernment is just choosing, judgment has like a moral background to it. And so there's a lot of different things we can go with here. And I think that just the contemplation of the word gratitude and the feeling that it brings up within you, to me, it represents something that is sort of like a secret key to life. It's like a superpower, but it depends on how you view it. And so I hope that in this conversation, we're going to actually be able to like tweak out some of the things, because gratitude can also just sort of be like, oh, just be happy for what you have. Like a lot of people sort of internalize it that way, and that's really not what it's about.
Well, tell me more about the superpower thing. Like this is new. I don't necessarily. Just can you expound on that a little bit more? Explain that a little bit more.
So, like for me, gratitude, being in a grateful state immediately aligns your mind. It makes your mind coherent and it makes it unified. So, all the different portions of your mind firing off at different random sequences. That's the stress state. It's like everything's red alarm. Everyone's in panic, everything's moving around and no one's really doing things together in one cohesive way. Gratitude turns down the alarm system, and it sort of says, hey, like, it's okay. You can think, you can organize. And that's really the point about how the brain works. If it's organized, then you're more effective. If it's disorganized because you're in stress all the time, then you're going to be less effective. You're not going to think clearly. You're going to be dumber. You're not going to actually be able to think more clearly. You're not going to, in reception, we talked about reception in episode 4, I believe. Yeah, episode 4. And reception is all about being able to be grateful and receive. Okay. And so to me, it's easy to kind of say like gratitude is something that just makes you happier with life. And, maybe it makes you more effective and everything. But if you actually view it like, no, this is my practice. Like people have meditation practice or an exercise practice, something that they incorporate in their life as a ritual that they do daily. If you make gratitude one of your practices and you get really good at calling up the emotion of gratitude and feeling that, then no matter what's happening in your world and in your life, no matter how stressful it gets, you have this ability to say gratitude and just pull it up within you. And the ease in which you can pull it up and the magnification of which it comes into your body is entirely about how much you've practiced it. And so if you're practiced, then the world has so much less pull over the ability to stress you out and make your brain go disorganized. Mm-hmm. You're able to stay more organized. You're able to stay cooler and calmer in situations. You're able to see more things that most people aren't. You're able to look outside and be more observant. And all of that comes down to being grateful. And I would also add that there's also a little bit of a magical component to it as well, which I think we're going to get into as we talk about this further, which is really that when you're grateful, you actually receive more, which means that seemingly magical things pop into your experience to the point where, and it can get to the point, I should say, where you can't deny that there is some organizing principle in the universe, because things are happening in a way in response to the way that you're feeling that there's a connection, right? You're connecting to something bigger and something deeper.
Do you think that gratitude is directly correlated with the release of outcome? You know what I mean? Not necessarily needing something to happen specifically that makes you feel grateful. Just be grateful to be going through whatever it is you need to go through to get to that point of gratitude where you're like, okay, like it might be going through a hard time in your life. And you're like, how do you get to a place in that moment where you're like, I'm grateful for this lesson. I'm learning things about myself, about my life, and the universe has given me the opportunity to grow in this moment. And that's like being able to let go of something and say, I'm regardless of how painful this is, I'm grateful that I'm here to experience this. right? I feel like I fall into that category a lot when I'm dealing with gratitude, or like approaching not dealing with it, but like approaching something from a grateful space in my heart, where it's like, all right, I'm obviously here to experience this, but there's a lot that I want to control, and recognizing that there's things that I can't control. It's like the serenity prayer, like the ability to remove, the stress around the things you can't change, you know what I mean? And accept the things you can change and all that. And I think that that's so directly correlated with gratitude for me personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it does detach you from outcome. It sort of puts you into a place of not focusing on the things that you lack, but focusing on the things that you have, and what you focus on grows. So if you continue focusing on what you're lacking, you're going to continue to have that experience, and it's just going to grow and grow and grow. Like we just talked about, if you practice gratitude, the feeling, you can activate it that much more quickly. And in fact, that's actually, people will have like, gratitude attacks or love attacks. We talked about this before with like panic attacks, that what's really happening right now is that you've practiced the emotion of fear so many times. You don't think of it as practicing it. You think of it as like, no, I'm responding to reality and fear because reality is fearful. But it's all perception. You're just practicing that state of mind in relation to the context around you. And so as you're doing that, you're practicing the state of fear until one day you're out, and all of a sudden one little thing triggers that fear that's been practiced so strong that it just takes you over. And now you can't see objective reality. All you see is fear and panic and paranoia. Everyone is a threat around you. Everything is a threat to your life, to your identity, to everything that matters to you. On the same flip side of that, practicing gratitude, like we're talking about, actually makes it something that's more likely to happen to you. Just some random thing can trigger it, and you just fall into this love spell. And so I really think that it does take you out of that outcome. It takes you out of that constant state of lack or desire. You could call it desire. And what did Buddha say about desire? It's the root of all suffering. And so you're really getting to the root of undoing suffering.
And that correlates with attachment, because I think that goes into the same quote, right? It's like the attachment or expectation. We expect to be a thing, and when we are having that panic attack or whatever, it's like that practice behavior feels so natural in that moment. It's like, oh, I'm used to feeling this way. This is how I respond to the world, with like anger, frustration, or whatever. And it's like, okay, this is how I get through stuff. But it's like,
and you believe that it's who you are.
Yes,
yeah, it's actually
you
becomes a
identify
part of your
with it.
identity. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. Kylie, hi, bud.
Hi. How's it going?
It's going good, man. It's going good. I know we've talked about gratitude a lot. You talk about it a lot. I think it's a daily practice for you. It's something that you're pretty good at.
Ideally, it would be, but I wouldn't say that every day I do it as well as I want to.
Which is true of everyone.
Yeah.
Of any practice for
I'm
everyone
just
all the
trying
time.
to be honest.
Absolutely.
I think that I actually was journaling about gratitude, I guess. I didn't think about it that way, but I was kind of thinking about I was falling into like a season of like lack, desire, and I want this, I wish that, and just, oh, well, why am I not respecting and being grateful for what I have now?
So I think you bring up a really good point about journaling there, because journaling is a way that you can actually take that energy, like if you're just sitting with the energy and practicing the energy of gratitude, if you're putting it on a paper and you're actually just like listing the things that you're appreciative of or the things that you are grateful of, then it's making them more real, right? Like a lot of people have a hard time holding on to ideas and thoughts in a real tangible way. Mm-hmm. But when they write it, there's some magic that happens, right? It's bringing what's in here and seems like ephemeral into the real world and making it tangible, and you're writing it down. It's like why writing your goals is so helpful. Yeah. So journaling about gratitude, I think, can be a really good practice for that, because it actually like helps you to really, really connect with that. And maybe even journaling for 5 minutes a day for, if someone wanted to do an experiment, right? Just see if this works. Gratitude journal for 5 minutes about things that you're grateful for, and don't force it, right? Don't do it like I'm trying to make myself feel grateful. If you're in a shitty mood, you're in a shitty mood, then just try to pick something small. That's just that
one
little
thing.
Yeah, just something little that you can do.
Why are you grateful for this?
Right, and so like when I started practicing gratitude, just sitting with the feeling of gratitude, I recognized how small it was initially. Trying to call it up didn't really feel like it was there, and so it was sort of like almost disheartening of like, am I doing this right? Like how am I going to bring this up if I can hardly feel it? And it was just like that patience of, this is the first time you're really practicing it, like intentionally. So just let it be there. Just let it be small. Do it for 5 minutes. come back and do it again later.
Yeah.
And then over a couple times of doing it, it's like, oh wow, I can tap into that way easier, and it actually becomes bigger. So the biggest thing is just making sure that you're authentically feeling it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not
And
cheap or fake or forced, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of my life, gratitude was kind of like a faith-based thing for me growing up in Christianity and living that existence. You learn ways to be grateful, but it's always external. I think it's less about, but yes, you understand what I mean. It's always like, oh, well, this thing is giving me this, so I'm grateful for that thing, right? Instead of just feeling gratitude of like, man, I'm just so feeling almost like lucky to be able to experience gratitude and or joy in that moment. I feel most grateful when I'm joyful, but I've learned to feel also patient and grateful in moments of struggle, and to try to practice the ability to release the stress and allow myself to be comforted by it at the same time. It's like, this stress is coming on. All right, this is good. Hottest fires make the strongest steel, that kind of thing. And that's hard. It's hard to get there. It's hard to get to a place where you're like, oh, I'm struggling, and man, I want to be happy. I want to find a silver lining in this. And sometimes it doesn't come. Sometimes you're just pissed off and things aren't working. But if you think about it later, which is a good practice for me, often in the moment I'm not able to be grateful, but then after the fact I can kind of backtrack a little bit and say, okay, what was it about that I needed to learn that I missed in the moment? And that's like the work being done. That's kind of how I do it.
It's your second chance.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah, the first chance in the moment when it's happening, and if you miss it, that's okay. You have a second chance. That's when you reflect on it later.
Yeah,
and if you don't take that second chance, you carry it with you, and then that's the whole thing.
Well, I think it's true of all of us, though, that we're very introspective people. We're less and less afraid to take the journey inward because we know that's how we're going to become the soul we want to become. The person we want to be. And it's like easy to walk around feeling just kind of really like pumped up and maybe high and mighty a little bit about stuff, or feeling down on yourself, and it's important to be grateful about those moments too, because those are formative things. Those are the things that tell us a lot about ourselves.
And the beauty of that too is what we've spoken about already, which is if you're okay with being not okay, then are you okay or are you not okay?
You're okay.
You're okay because you're okay with being not okay. If you're okay with being sad, you're okay. And then sadness actually takes on a certain beauty. If you're okay with being angry, then you can actually learn from what that energy of anger is trying to tell you about how you perceive your own sense of power or something.
Yeah.
And so it's always about that. There's like the two levels, right? There's like the what's happening level, and then your perception of what's happening. And so if you can allow what's happening to be what it is, and then decide that you're going to live from a place of perceptually choosing, being deliberate about the way that you want to interact, then what you'll find is that the content of the world actually changes. And so it's a weird conversation when you're talking about religion and how they tie it to something external, because it's sort of like it can't not be tied to the external in some sense, but at the same time, you can't be relying on the external to make you feel that way.
That's what I'm talking
It's like you have it backwards. You have to feel the way first and then allow it to manifest outwardly. You can't wait for the outward manifestation in order to signal back to you to make you feel that way.
Yeah, and the argument to that point, from a Christian's perspective, is that, God, Jehovah, Allah, whoever you pray to, is in everything and all things. So even when you're not grateful, you're still supposed to, understand that is also from God. But then they would counter that as well with, oh, that's the sin of the flesh. That's the sin of the mind. That's the workings of the enemy, the devil, in your heart and in your soul, telling you that, because this is an impermanent place, you know what I mean? And it's going to go away and you're going to ascend and go to heaven. Well, I think that's
so interesting, because within the right context, everything that you just said was completely true.
Absolutely.
But within the right context. And it's not the dogmatic attachment to some sort of ideologue, right? Or ideology. It's the truth of it expressed. Again, it's almost like they've done what I just said about putting the external before the internal, and then are using the correct words to sort of get it mixed.
But it is all about words in that sense. It's not about authenticity or feeling or like really being in it. It's about, can you say the right words so that I know you're well practiced in your religion, not, oh my gosh, I'm actually feeling this really deep sense of gratitude and good things are coming to me and lessons are coming to me and I'm grateful for both. Gratitude isn't, I can list 20 things in my house I'm grateful for, and it can be that if that's how you practice finding the feeling of it.
Which
but
you
what
should,
the thing that matters is the feeling, the energy, the being in it.
Mm-hmm.
Not like this facade of gratitude. It's not about what it looks like to someone else. It's about how you feel in it.
Because if it's about how it looks to someone else, then you're still tied into approval from others.
Oh, yeah, and then you're not going to feel grateful.
And that's a very strong concept of religion. So you're looking for the approval of God. You're trying to make God
I'll say that
see that you're a good person.
it could be.
Well, I think that
Because I think I think that maybe like in some dogmatic religion, and maybe the stereotypical religious person is sort of in that energy field right now, which is totally okay. They are what they are.
Sure.
But there's truth in religion. I think that's the biggest thing. It's just that it's like when you have the ears to hear it, then you'll be able to hear it. You know, like you pick up a book and you read it, and you're like, oh, it's good. 5 years later, you come back, you pick it up, you're like, oh my God, this book is incredible. Like, holy, how did I not think this 5 years ago? Well, you just weren't in the state to receive it properly. And so it's the same thing with all things, but it's the same thing with religion too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that...
Because I hate when people actually are super down on religion, because I think it's beautiful. I think it gets distorted, but I think the truth of religion is actually really beautiful. Yeah.
I also want, for context, say that I do not identify as a Christian, but I do believe that in some, my own way, I do practice religion. You know, I have like, and religion maybe is not the proper word to use, more of like my response to life is more karmic in nature, where I recognize good and bad, and I also understand that no bad is absolutely bad and no good is absolutely good, and there's a lot more gray areas than I could have possibly imagined. And I wanted to add to the Christianity side of it too, where I found a lot of joy and a lot of gratitude and a lot of good things from the Word.
Absolutely.
Growing up, and I would never steer anyone away from any learnings of that if they were interested in it, because there's so much value in it. You know, there's times where I'm out doing my job and I'm in the world, and you know, I ponder upon it. I'm like, man, you know, the Creator, if He was real, or she was real, or it was real, like it would want, I think, us to experience those moments of gratitude where I look around, I'm just so happy for the sun and so happy to be around living things and growing things and breathing air. Just there's so much to be grateful for.
To me, that feeling, when you connect to the exact experience you're just saying, that is actually proof that there is some sort of loving force in the world, right? To me, I see it like that analogy of the sun being obscured by the clouds that is prominent in a lot of religious texts. It talks about how it's sort of like, to use the religious terms, God is always there loving you, wanting to give you the best things. You, in your smallness, block it off and turn away, which is the sin, right? Missing the mark. And so then you reap the consequences of your turning away from the goodness that is God's, the prodigal son. That's the story of the prodigal son.
We talk about that a lot. And
right, and so in the context, I don't want to turn this whole episode into a religious
No.
But in the context of religion, I think that you can understand those stories in a way that have deeper meanings that you could actually talk to an atheist about, or a pure scientific materialist about, and unless they were going to collapse into their dogma, you could have a conversation. That's the question, though. Are they going to collapse into their dogma, into their ideology, and then they're just becoming a mouthpiece for that ideology rather than actually speaking authentically and coming from true experience? Because this is all around us all the time. Like in your present moment and in your life, we've all had the experience of that thing is good, that thing is bad. Oh, I'm stuck in this cycle that doesn't feel good. Something that is wrong, right? You know what's true and what's not true. Everyone does. It's within us. It's just a matter of getting rid of those ideas, that labeling system our mind does, that prevents us from seeing the truth because we're looking through the screen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that in those moments, it's important to look inward and to maybe think that inside is what's wrong. You know what I mean? There's something going on in our hearts and in our minds that we're missing, and it's stifling our experience.
I'm sorry if your computer explodes.
Kaboom, bitch.
That's not funny because it would happen to me. And I would be grateful.
You'd be grateful. If Kylie's computer explodes and we lose some of this footage, then it's something to be grateful for. We'll find out why later on, even though that's a leap of faith too, right? It requires a leap of faith to sort of like be grateful sometimes. But again, it's about wanting to stay true and adhere to that emotion and that feeling rather than giving your power away to the world to change that.
Yeah, like even something simple like my car. I was like, this thing is gonna this thing won't even go when it's in drive. It just makes a big noise. I'm like, this thing's gonna explode. But I'm grateful that I have it. I'm grateful it goes when it does. And when it died, I was like, actually, this is a great thing because I used it and I appreciated it and I loved it. And now I have something way better and way more like
reliable,
functional for my life. But the gratitude in both of them was the same.
Mm-hmm.
And like, because I respected what I had when I had it, even though it might not be like the best thing, I was still grateful. It wasn't about, this isn't flashy enough. It's like, no, this is serving its purpose. And if I respect that it's serving its purpose and providing me with something useful, and I'm just so happy and grateful that I have it, even if it doesn't work all the time, like maybe it should. It's still practical and useful and good, and I'm grateful for that. And then when that time of gratitude is respected and fulfilled, then something else is brought to you that is like, hey, like, thank you for respecting that. Thank you for taking care of that. I have something better for you. But if you're not going to respect the thing you had initially, you're probably going to get something else just as unreliable.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and that brings up a really good point that I wanted to say earlier too, was that if you imagine that you were, say you're the parents to kids, say you have two different sons, and one of them does not ask for anything from you, and every time you give to him, he is just, thank you so much, this is amazing, I truly am really appreciative of this. Another son, you give him even just basic necessities or whatever. Well, I wish I had that. Well, it's not as good as this. Never grateful, never thankful to you for what.
Well, of course you're supposed to give that to me. I'm your son. Why wouldn't you do that? Just
an
assuming, an entitlement.
An entitlement.
Sure, Tim.
And so, of course, you're as like the parent figure, you're gonna want to give to the kid who's more grateful. Of course, you're gonna want to do that because you feel good giving to them because you know they receive it and they get it back. The other kid, it's like, well, why would I even want to give it to you? You don't even appreciate what I've given you so far. Like, why would you get more? And it's actually funny that life is actually the exact same way. When you're appreciative of what you have, you get more. The rich get richer. When you are entitled and saying, I should have this and I don't, and I'm angry about this and not appreciating what you have, then you actually get less. Things are still taken away from you. The poor get poorer.
Do you think that in that moment, would a person want to still try to be compassionate enough to still give to the ungrateful child? That's a different conversation, but I think that that's part of gratitude as well. Like, I have a child, and they might be an ungrateful little shit, but I love that child, and the example of my love is I'm still going to show that child love, even though, like, obviously you don't want to spoil the child beyond reason, right?
That's
like,
the point.
There's a rationale there.
So at what point does you continuing to give to an ungrateful child no longer serve that child? And I think that's a really important thing, because at a certain point,
to that point, then it probably hasn't served the child as well as it probably could have. But
maybe
what's the turn then from there? Let's ask that.
Well, I would say, so just to lay this out a little further, maybe the child is sort of like has a self-hatred thing and can't accept good things because they're just down on themselves.
Okay.
You continuing to show up and show them that you are cared for and you are loved, even though you're not grateful for what I've given you. That might be the thing they need in order to open up and say, wow, like, you actually do love me and maybe I am worthy of feeling love. Or they're the one we've kind of been describing, which is like the egotistical, I deserve this and I should have this and I didn't get enough and blah, 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 blah. And in that one, it's not serving you to continue to give to them. And so in the same way, I would say that life, the universe, spirit, however you want to say it, it's giving us what we need. It's giving us what will serve us best. And so if we're grateful and we're enjoying what we have, then we're in a state of reception where we're able to actually receive more, and that will serve us. If we're not, the world's still going to be giving us stuff. The question is, can we allow ourselves to receive it or not? Yeah. And if it's not giving us stuff, maybe it's because it wouldn't serve us. We talked about this before about lottery winners.
Oh.
How people want money and then they win the lottery and destroy their lives.
And the suicide rate's like crazy high.
Exactly.
And murder.
And murder. And so I have a question for all three of us, actually. Can we remember a time in our life where we were that ungrateful child?
Oh, of course.
Absolutely.
I certainly can as well. And I don't know if I was a child at the time, but I do remember a time in my life where I had a lot of abundance. And I think we talked about this recently, where I was like, just had a lot of everything I needed, and I was working, making lots of money, new car, nice condo, you know, friends and partying all the time and just living in abundance, like way in abundance, and just miserable, like fucking miserable. And there was a lot of other factors involved, but I think one of the key factors was I was missing gratitude for sure in those moments because I didn't understand how good the universe was being to me and how terrible I was reflecting upon all of those things and just being ungrateful and treating it ungratefully. And then it culminated with a lot of bad things happening to me shortly after that. And I think that was one of the major missing points was no gratitude. I was just assuming, oh yeah, I'm supposed to have this. This is my life. This is what I'm supposed to have.
While not even really respecting or revering that which you had, and therefore not appreciating that which you had.
Yes.
Until it got to the point where the best thing that served you was to have it ripped away.
Yeah.
And kind of show you like, hey, you need to be more respectful. You need to be more reverent.
So appreciation is directly correlated with gratitude as well. To a degree, right?
So there's an idea from one of the teachers I follow, Abraham Hicks, who talks about the difference between gratitude and appreciation. And they say that appreciation is very pure in its energy because it's just appreciation. Gratitude has a little bit of like, I'm grateful that I overcame this, or I'm grateful that this negative thing happened, but I still was able to come out of it, right?
So it can manifest a little self-serving kind of.
There's a little twinge.
Right?
There's still a fly in the
So
ointment.
is that like healthy ego though? It depending on the alignment, right?
Maybe. I think gratitude is helpful along the way. You know, like as part of the evolving journey, thinking of the term gratitude is very helpful. But ultimately, we're talking about appreciation. I think,
Of course.
because I think that it is the appreciation that is at the core of all of it. But I also do like the idea that gratitude is about, you know, like when you receive something, that's when you're grateful. So when you say thank you, when you're feeling gratitude, it's because you have received something from someone. And so if we believe in this idea that the thoughts we think and the energy that we hold within our body on a consistent daily habitual basis has anything to do with the way that the world responds to us and the outcome of our lives, then of course we want to say that the more we can hold the energy of being grateful, which means receiving, the more the world is going to allow more things to be received through us. We're going to have more things come in. So.
And I'm going to say one thing, and then I want to hear from Kylie too, because I'm curious, because I know that her and I have had similar struggles with our ego and different things in our life. But the you know, back to where I was before with like the abundance in my life, and then all that being removed from my life, and then having very little, but also being very happy and very content and very relieved that all of that was gone. You know, it was like the release happened first, and then there was a time of like a reverence, right? Like looking back, like, oh man, like, you know, that was pretty cool. But then it opened up so much more in life, you know what I mean? Where we have those moments where it's like, okay, it's going to break us down and build us back up. And if we find true gratitude, and I really didn't understand it at the time that I was experiencing true appreciation for the hard times of my life. That came much later because I'm still learning so much about that, you know what I mean? I was not learned and not very spiritual in that regard and introspective. But looking back on it now, I kind of imagine, like, I'd love to have a conversation with myself. Mm-hmm. You know, what do you think about absolutely. That? Like, I'd love to go back to like 22-year-old me and be like, hey, motherfucker, come here.
Yeah.
Let me learn you some things. And I'm sure everybody feels that way, you know? But I also admire him, you know? Mm-hmm. I look back on it and I do admire him. I'm like, you had a tenacious little fucker back then and you had a lot of power, but it was just poorly used and poorly appreciated and certainly not aligned. But that has manifested into something else, and that's not me saying like, oh, I'm just this great individual. It's just an appreciation, and I'm grateful for myself at that time. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think that maybe Kylie has something to add to that from her own experience. Yes, no, maybe so.
From being grateful, young or
for the hard times, for learning through difficult times.
Yeah, I think an important thing to know in really difficult moments, like when you're being faced with, this is like one of the hardest things that you could go through in your lifetime, you know, it's hard to be grateful in the moment. Of course, it's, you know, it can be terrifying and awful and bad, but looking back, like some of the hardest things that I've ever been through now, like, I'm like, oh my gosh, like that was so fundamental and important. And if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be nearly as loving or caring or authentic as I am now. and I still have a ways to go in that, but like gratitude made all of the difference. Gratitude for the struggle and for the trial made way for a triumphant like outcome that like I am continually allowing to manifest into something more beautiful. And it's a process. It's not easy and it's not glamorous and it's rough, but gratitude is really like where that shifts from this is a living hell to this is an awesome lesson and this is something that I can use to strengthen
Well, I think
anything.
what you're talking about right there is
Awesome. Kylie, I dig the fuck out of that. No, I feel that. But I also want to, I don't know how to approach it because I feel like I've only known you for a couple of years. And in that short amount of time, you've grown like leaps and bounds in so many ways. But again, like, you know, we weren't ever really close before, so I don't know you from any other time in your life where you weren't going through so much growth and you weren't experiencing this beautiful metamorphosis in your life. You know what I mean? It's fascinating for me to watch because there's a side of me that's kind of envious, you know, if I'm being clear, because I wish that, I have a deep respect for your wisdom at your age. And I think that anyone who was around you for any period of time can see that you're a very potent individual and that you have a lot of power and a lot to give. And I don't know if there was ever a time in your life where you didn't have gratitude in some capacity because of your upbringing and also because you're just bright like that. You know what I mean? You just appreciate so much and you're always so nice and always so happy to be around people. And you just, even if your dog ass tired, you're still just like, hey buddy, how's it going? You're just so nice to everybody all the time. And it's amazing to see that. And it's inspirational for me because I can fall into the energy of just dismissing people and not wanting to put the effort in to be open and understanding and receiving of others. And I feel like you just do that so naturally, like it's a reflex for you. And I'm a little envious of that. So where do you think that comes from? You think it's an inherent kind of trait that you have, or do you think that you learned it over time, or?
I would say it's like a nice blend, probably.
Interesting.
There's always been a twinge of you should be grateful for what you have. I grew up in the Dominican Republic, not all my childhood, but a decent chunk of it. And we lived in a mountain. We lived where we didn't have hot water. We didn't have electricity most of the time. Like,
no trash service.
No, we burned our trash, you know, showered with a bucket of water and, you know, run out of water, you run out of water, you know.
And yet, mountains and oceans and beauty and
but
community.
you're grateful for people because there's always people, you know, there's always like community and that's always been important to me. So I would say my like appreciation for people has kind of just always been there. I love people. People are my favorite. Besides marshmallows, I really like marshmallows too, but
I understand.
I really do. They're just so good.
It's a struggle. I get it.
I think that the authenticity and depth of it has grown because facing the hardships I went through was a big thing for me. I avoided it for so long, and actually like some of it was blocked out for a while, and a big thing was facing it and recognizing, okay, there's work to be done here. And it wasn't a graceful time. It wasn't good. I was really in a rough spot. But like, you're right. I'm strong. I'm resilient.
Yes.
I'm a fighter. And, I think that gratitude had to have been there in some subtle sense, but I wouldn't say I necessarily like focused on it or like knew that it was happening. Maybe like background, like unconsciously I had gratitude going on, but I think that I also really strived to learn from what was going on. And I definitely fell into victimhood for a while, but then after like Tim actually is kind of like saving grace over here for me. Tim helped me really understand a deep understanding of like what healing looked like. I tried what I was able to, for healing, and it to some capacity did work, but it wasn't the thing, and when gratitude is present, even in like, Tim would make me so mad because he would tell me like, here's this practice, like do this, and I was like, no, like you don't even understand, you don't know what I went through, like I can tell you the words but you don't understand, and I still think that that's true to a point, but it doesn't change the fact that truth is truth in a healing process, and maybe that's too vague, but
No.
Well, I see it as two sides. There's like truth and compassion.
Yeah.
So if you're someone who is in a damaged place and someone comes at you and just like tells you this is what you need to do to get better and just lays it out, it's like, fuck you. You don't understand, like exactly what you just said.
Resist.
There's no compassion. There's no compassion there.
Right.
And on the flip side of that is, oh, it's okay. Like you are a victim. Like no truth, but complete. Like I understand. Complete
Fall into her
compassion.
energy, right?
And that doesn't help anyone.
Yeah.
And so
before
it
I met
has
you,
to
that's
be
the only two polarities I'd known.
exactly. So it has to be the blend of truth and compassion, which means that it has to say, I completely understand you. I feel that the pain that you're in, and not invalidate that pain.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, not enable that pain by saying that does not have power over you. I'm not gonna let you off the hook of what is true, but at the same time, I understand. You know what I mean?
This practice. Try it out. If it doesn't work, cool. We'll find something else. So open-ended. Like you gave me all the space. It was great. But when we started like talking and getting deep with it, like I still remember I was just like so mad, like how can you say what you're saying? You don't even understand. And then like you asked if I could be grateful for what happened, like in a way. You said it in some kind of way, but I don't remember exactly verbatim what you said, and I was just like thinking about it, and I had to process it, and I was like, actually, like, I probably wouldn't be as like resilient or spunky or wise or mature, I wouldn't be a lot of the things I am without what had happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so gratitude really changed my perspective on the life circumstances that were given to me and allowed me to appreciate the process even when it sucked. Even when it was like, this is the most painful moment. This is uncomfortable and I hate this. But this moment is a moment where it's like, this is part of the process. Like, this is part of the growth. And if you're not thankful for that, you're not respecting it, how would you get anything better? Like, that's the part of like cleaning a wound that sucks. Like, you gotta pour the alcohol and then you gotta dig out the infection. That hurts. But you're super grateful you did that because you didn't lose your arm. Like, it's part of it.
I see all of this as part of the life path where there's a part of us that we believe like, well, I didn't choose the cards I was dealt, in this life. I didn't choose to go through the experiences I went through as a child. And from the pure conscious mind, maybe the ego mind we could call it, that's true. But you are so much more than your conscious mind. You really want to ask the question, where do your thoughts come from? Like, you don't create them. They come to you. Bright insights and ideas are brilliant little flashes that all of a sudden it comes to you and you understand. And you're like, oh my gosh, this thing, like I never saw it that way before. Well, did you do that? Well, in one sense you did. It's just like you're beating your heart, but are you beating your heart? It's yes and no, right? It's a very hard thing to say. So the life cycle circumstances you came into your world with, they were partly not chosen by you, but they were also partly chosen by you because you wanted to have specific issues, barriers, contrasts to go through to evolve you into this rich character that you wanted to play out in your life. I think some of the most amazing people in the world had really tough childhoods because that was the formative years that really put them to the grindstone to make them into something that's profound. True. And without that, you can't be profound. You can't be amazing without going through that. It's like the thing you like to say about, the iron sharpening iron, and like the welding that has to happen from great heat and great pressure creates a diamond, for example.
Sure.
All of those things. And I think that gratitude is the way to come back to that part of yourself that chose it, who loves you and wanted you to become your greatest potential, your greatest self, and wanted you to in all of the hardness that it was, and in all of the low moments, never left you, was always loving you because it knew that this was for you, even though it was really hard to go through.
I want to use a page out of, well, actually, it's an actually thing you say all the time. It's not a page out of your book, but, and I'm going to ask Kylie a question. It could be a page out of it, but maybe I should write a book, seriously, or 2 or 3, on multiple subjects. But Tim talks a lot about love and finding our way back to love, loving yourself, loving the experience, loving the circumstances, and that it is really the thing that's going to help you through so much. And I want to ask Kylie another question because I'm so interested. But do you think that it was your capacity for love, right? Experiencing love in so many interesting ways in your young life, that was something that carried you through that and also allowed you to have the openness to start doing that type of work that we were just talking about, like, digging up through the wounds and, pulling the skeletons out of the closet and working on things, do you think that your capacity for love has also grown in that, or do you feel like it's just been this amazing aura that just floats around you? Like, I would say, if I was going to describe you in a word, that would probably be it. Like, everywhere you go, like, love follows you around. People want to be around you. People like to see you. And similarly with Tim too, you guys are just incredible people like that. You just exude so much care and interest and patience with people. And I know that kind of went away from my question, but do you think that love is one of the major reasons why you're able to find your way to so much gratitude in your life now?
I actually really had to understand what love is. You hear love a lot growing up. Your parents tell you they love you. Your friends tell you they love you.
Sometimes when they don't.
Exactly.
Right? When they're yelling at you and they're angry at you and they're, don't you know I love you? Yeah. It's like, you're not being loving right then.
It's a different kind of love, isn't it?
Well, we'll talk about that.
All right, yeah.
Episode on love,
I think that in my younger years, I knew that love was deeper than what it was being portrayed to me as. And I couldn't really put my finger on that. And surprise, surprise again, Tim taught me, and showed me what, unconditional, real, love looks like.
I want to interject really quickly.
Do it.
I think that it's fair to say that Tim taught you, but it's also, I think, truer to say, and from my perspective, that rather than teach you, Tim just kind of pulled the curtains back and was like, look at who you are.
I would rather say I reminded you.
There you
reminded
go.
me. Yeah.
Reminded.
I really like that phrase.
Illuminating things about yourself to yourself. That's very important.
I think that's true because a lot of the things that you kind of brought to me was like, oh yeah, I know that, but the way that you say it makes more sense, or it's more clear, and it's an aha. Reminded me. Yeah, I like that.
That's beautiful. I think that likewise Chantal has also done that for me in many ways. She's just it's in there. You're just not focusing on that. You have other focus in your life, but I see more of you than you see of yourself. And in this moment, you're not going to like what I have to say.
Yeah.
But you need to hear this. And thank goodness that I have a little bit of sense, so I can kind of well, maybe she's right, and maybe I have things wrong, and maybe I just need to think about it a little bit and kind of pace around, all right, cool, yeah, all right. Yeah, all right, cool, I'm wrong, cool, I can be wrong. Wrong's good. Or maybe I'm right, but I'm also not seeing it all the ways that I could see it. Okay, let me just rip my eyelids off and have a look around in there real quick and see what's going on and get real fucking crazy about it. You know what I mean? Pace around my house. All right, yeah, this fucking sucks. I don't like it. I don't like feeling like this, but then 2 or 3 days of that, and then I'm like, you know what? You're onto something there. I'm feeling it today. Mm-hmm. And it's new.
And part of that is just going through the process of the thoughts, right? You have to sort of work them through and consider what you're feeling, and then each little micro emotion that comes up being well, instead of buying into this, I want to look at this. Is this real? Is this true? And asking it, we always keep coming back to the rope and the snake analogy. Like, is it rope or
I
is it
love
snake?
that. It's so good.
And so it's like, look at it. Is that true? Is it not true? And again, that prevents false guru. It prevents you from falling into believing just what somebody else says. It's actually like, hold on, let me actually take in what you say and cut this through myself and see if it's true or not. And then over that process, you come out of it, right? Slowly you come out of it, the emotions release, and you come back to who you are, and then you see it clearly. And you can see, like, I see where your truth is. I see the nugget here that was necessary for me to hear.
Tell me something, Tim.
Yeah.
Better ask a question. You don't have to tell me anything if you don't want to.
I demand the answer.
I wonder sometimes about the moments in your life that's brought you to such interesting, profound clarity on a great many subjects that I myself have pondered but haven't delved as deeply into as you have. And I feel like there's just so much more there that I'm curious about, and we don't have to talk about it, but I know that you had those moments too, and again, there's nothing that has to be said, but I had a conversation with you a couple of weeks ago, and I felt like it was not the first time, but one of the first times that I saw you. You know what I'm talking about? And I don't think that you're putting anything on. It's not what I'm saying. You're always yourself, and I love that about you. Authenticity is very much apparent to anyone who's been around you for any given time. But I think that you have astounded me with the amount of work and the amount of just I'm trying to draw the word. It's like you're this fucking pillar, man, but you're also like floating in a beautiful ocean of truth. Is that interesting to say? Like,
Yeah,
you're like
that's a beautiful image. It's
solid, amazing thing, but here you are, the solid, amazing thing, just bouncing in your life, and I'm just like, I fucking want some of that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, give me some of that. And I feel like I'm getting it, man. I'm receiving it, but it's like, because I do a lot of sinking.
Well, I hope that
You know what I mean?
if I have something of value that I can share it with
Well,
you
you
guys,
do.
like, of course.
You do. That's the thing that's so curious about you, and I you just not just us. It's like if you have an opportunity and you see that there's an openness in somebody, you might have just a random interaction. Like, I feel like it's just your delivery system, man. We talk about that a lot. It like comes out of you, and I find it fascinating, because I'm the person who will just be like, what does this person want? And you'll be like, what does this person need?
Yeah.
And it might not be anything from you, but it's like the conduit of that information that you are. It's just here, boom, and I've seen people light up just from a distance in conversation in some of the parties we had, whatever. Like, people just light up, and it's like, fuck, man, it's magic, And I don't know if you give yourself enough credit for that, but I'm going to do it because I like pumping you up,
Amen.
Well, I appreciate
You give very
the love
freely,
fest.
and you love very deeply and authentically and unconditionally to everybody that you
Everybody.
interact with, and I'm grateful for that.
Me too.
100%.
100%. And I wonder about those moments that... You're welcome. I wonder about those moments that were formative for you, that brought you to where you are now, and what I think of your life moving forward. It's like, man, who are you going to be when you're fucking 60, dude? You know what I mean? I hope I'm around for that.
Hot.
That'd be... Well, yes, but we won't have to get into that. I'm going to stop spraying the walls down with love for Tim, because I know it's probably not the most comfortable thing, but...
No, I appreciate all of it. I love hearing this stuff, honestly. And the conversation that we had a couple weeks ago was about, I am very hard on myself.
Yeah.
And that's an arc that's been true for me for my entire life. And I can point to experiences in my youth that, were formative of that, but I don't need to. It's
cool.
that's for me kind of thing.
Sure, man. Right on.
I understand where they come from. I also understand that part of my hardness on myself was part of what built me into something strong, for better or for worse in certain ways. So I also know that my mind is as powerful as my mind can be at times. It is also makes it really hard to get it out of bad places, right? So if my mind spirals into something bad, it takes a lot of work for me to recognize that I'm doing this to myself, because it's a powerful engine, and if you use a powerful engine in a bad way, then it's going to turn out bad. You use it in a good way. It's the tool analogy, actually. All tools are just neutral tools, and they differ in power. So is a more powerful tool inherently evil because it can create more evil? No, it can also create as much good. It's just at such an intensity that it's, at a different playing field. And so in this way, and I'm not tooting my own horn when I say this, it's just I recognize that there's an intellectual capacity that I have, and that can hurt me in a lot of ways. I think that actually intelligence in our culture is overrated. I think that it's very useful. It's a very useful tool, and we should celebrate it. But I also think that it's people identify with it too much, and then it becomes a place where people hold self-worth. And then people either say, I'm smart, so I'm awesome, or I'm dumb, so I'm worthless.
You're intellectual, Tim, and there's nobody will deny that. But I think what shines through more for me with you is wisdom. You're wise, right? It's one thing to be smart. And I think accumulation of intelligence isn't as, like you say, it's overplayed or whatever, but I think it's not as difficult as wisdom.
Sure.
And I say difficult loosely, it's not necessarily difficult, but it's like wisdom comes with acceptance of knowledge. Like, you can learn things, so you don't have to receive it or accept it. It's like, okay, there it is, and it's boxed. You know what I mean? But you exude wisdom and care, and that's different. You know what I mean? That's like such a enveloping thing. You know what I mean? It moves through everything. Wisdom. It's not stagnant or stiff like intellect. You know what I mean? Intellect can be very rigid.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wisdom is much more intricate and much more flowing. And I think you exude that more than intellect.
Part of that comes from a certain approach that I always want to see both sides, and I can't honestly tell you where that comes from. And, you know, that might be karmic or something inherent to who I am. I'm blessed with it. I absolutely accept
seriously.
a lot of the blessings that are just inherent for who I am, for sure. And I'm also grateful for a lot of the covert blessings, right? The ones that don't look like blessings, the ones that it's like a real struggle sometimes. And I recognize in the same way that you were just talking about your past experiences and looking on them with gratitude. And again, this is why gratitude is that secret weapon. Is because when you're dealing with the portions of yourself that are the undercover blessings that don't really look like blessings, the practice of gratitude in those moments unlocks them, unlocks that silver lining, unlocks that deep gold nugget that's shrouded in the pain. Because if the pain is shrouding it, all you see is pain. But if you're grateful, even in the face of the pain, then what's happening? Is it pain or is it gratitude? You're grateful for being in the pain because you know that there's something, you're carving yourself out. Yeah. You're carving out the lake so that the water can fill it. It's like you're creating that space, and it can be painful. But as long as you're holding true to that understanding, then you'll cut through. It's the secret weapon for that. So yeah, a lot of what you're talking about, I think, is something that maybe is just inherent or whatever. I also have had certain experiences that, you know, I'm not going to go into all of them right now, but I know that you can relate with the one that I'm going to share right now. Is I have had an experience where I basically came to the conclusion that I was either going to do, it's even like getting me emotionally even thinking about it, but to do, stop looking at me,
Okay.
to do the capital W work, to do it for real, or die. And either one was okay. I was truly released and in surrender that I was going to commit to it. And if I died, then I died. And obviously that's not what I wanted, but it was not, I let go of attachment to trying to control my life out of fear that if I lost my life, that something bad would happen. I surrendered into the greater whole. And I know that you have that experience too. I know that you have a death experience that has something deep.
No, man. I'm feeling you right now. I don't want to get into that, but thank you for that. So many people are afraid to lay themselves out there, man. And I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for your friendship. I'm grateful for your knowledge. I'm grateful for Kylie's love and acceptance and the community that we've built together and are continuing to build. And, you know, man, that's fucking awesome, dude. That's amazing that you came to that. And it hurts me to hear that because I know what that feels like, but I also know that the person that you are was able to choose the path that led you here and led you to us. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so glad you thought more of yourself to not go that hard with it, man. And
well, it
means a lot, dude.
Continual work.
It means a lot, and I feel very blessed.
Thank you.
I really do.
I'm blessed to be with you guys as well.
Yeah, man. I love you very much. You're a good person.
Good things are happening.
Excuse me, everybody. I'm a sensitive guy, and I love my friends very, very much.
Coming out of that, I will say that
Bring me out.
after the intense emotion of and release, which is, you know, I think we all come up against barriers in our life. I think that the question is small barriers, big barriers. how do you react? If you come up to that gate, do you decide to step through it or do you turn back? That's really the question. Do you let go into what is deeper, or do you stay superficial and try to control what's here in order to cling to some past reality? Do you walk through the gate or do you turn back? And I think all of us will, in our evolution, come up to big gates. And a lot of people aren't ready. A lot of people will walk up to a gate and it looks too scary and they'll turn back. And maybe they spend their entire life walking up against that same gate and turning back around. To the point where they maybe don't even really walk up to the gate anymore. They just stay in their little distance, get comfort from it.
Yeah.
But when you're ready for more, which is something that no one can enforce on you, it has to be your inner decision from maybe not even your conscious mind, just something deeper within you that tells you that it's time to move forward. You get pressed up against that gate and you just say, no more. I'm not doing it the way I used to do it. That's not working for me anymore.
Yes.
I'm ready for something more. I'm going to take that leap of faith. I'm going to take that risk and step through this gate. And that's surrender. And we're all going to do that multiple times with multiple things. But the last one is existence itself. And I haven't gotten to that point yet, but walking through the gate of releasing existence itself is definitely something that is, that separates the saints from everyone else,
Yeah, I dig that, man. I'm vibing with that, but I think that I don't know. I think there's a little bit of reconciliation with the concept of death that will lead a person to a place like that where they can, find that gate and say, am I ready? And I think you might walk up to that bugger a few times in your life, if you're lucky, find your way to it. And you might have to turn back a couple times, sometimes you got to, backstep a little bit. And
no shame in turning back. The only thing I want to encourage for people is not to get comfortable and just stay where they are. Because that's the misery. You die with your song left on your lips.
Yes, man.
And that's a terrible way to be. Singing a song of quiet desperation.
Oh, man. Yeah. Don't let that be the story of you. Yeah. Don't give up. Knock down 7, get up 8.
Be kind to yourself. If you're in the process of going through something that you're up against a gate and you're not sure if you can go through it and you turn back, it's all right. Let it be all right. Because then when you come back to the gate again, you'll be more prepared. If you condemn yourself for it, you're going to just eventually completely rationalize that you shouldn't even walk through. You shouldn't even go near that gate.
Yeah.
And that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
Well, that comes into low self-worth.
Can you hold yourself? Are you important enough to want to walk through that gate for what's on the other side of it? And even if it does mean that you die, right? Even if it does, and whether it's a physical death or like a metaphorical death or an identity death, we're not the same people we were 10 years ago. We talked about this before. That past version of ourselves no longer exists. It's dead. It only exists in our memories. And even that's not really accurate. So when you walk through it, you release a portion of your identity and you're surrendering the life of that identity. You die. A little bit of you dies. But not in the sense of like that, the sad, depressed, like, oh, a little bit of me died. In the sense of death and rebirth. Something died so that the room could be created for something new to.
Yeah, and I think in those moments we have a decision to make too, where we choose to allow ourselves to die of that thing, and will it ascend or will it descend in our life? Will it be an anchor that holds us back, or will it be the thing that we release and allows us to move forward in life? You know what I mean? And we're all in some ways like kind of chained up by things a little bit, and occasionally you undo the shackles and the chain goes away and then you're lighter. And I think we tapped on that a little bit earlier. With
that is stepping through the gate. That's what that is. Yeah,
stepping through it, man. Release the chains of your existence.
I'm reminded of the story, and I was reminded of this earlier too, of the person who went into the doctor's office and was told they're in stage 4 cancer and they have 6 months to live, and they walked out with the biggest smile on their face because they had released. That gave them permission to release all the stuff that didn't matter, and for the first time, they experienced life, truly.
Yeah, and I understand that very, very intricately.
That's an archetypal thing about what we're talking about walking through the gate, walking through that surrender.
How you doing, bud?
Good.
Yeah. Me too.
Bringing back gratitude, because I do want to keep it on point. I think this is all about gratitude, because being grateful for the struggle is what allows you the resilience to move forward, the resilience to say yes to that gate, to walk up to it. Because you recognize that there is goodness all around you. And if you're holding on to the negative things, then there's something in you that is stuck. And it's probably because of fear. It's probably because you're afraid of letting it go. And it's your decision. You have to decide, when are you ready to face it? When are you ready to do the work? And a lot of times the work is just a month or 2 months, 3 months of just grinding through the mud.
Or 5 minutes.
Or 5 minutes. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
I think we just, and through our few minutes of interaction, expressed the appreciation point we were talking about earlier, where we're able to reflect upon a moment and to have that emotion well up. That's part of gratitude in a huge way. To see where we are now, to look back on that moment and be like, man, it's like you want to, good for you. Good job. Keep doing that. Keep working toward those moments when the hard moment comes.
You mentioned having a conversation with your past self, and there was a moment that sparked all of that experience for me where I was out on the beach in Florida looking up at the stars, like bawling my eyes out, just in complete pain. And I had some knowing in the moment, but I didn't really know what it was, but I knew something was there. And I had the experience later on of in a deep meditation, actually looking down on myself from the sky.
Yeah, we talked about that some, but it still
it's that
blows my mind.
Going back and having that conversation with yourself and loving that past version of yourself.
Yeah.
You were talking earlier about the painful things that you went through, and going back right now to actually like be there for her, who was in that moment. Be there for her and actually have a conversation with her and tell her, I can't take this from you, but I'm here for you. You have to go through this.
I've had it like an experience where like in that moment I was just like, okay, like so young, so scared and just didn't know anything, There was some sense of peace in all of the chaos and all of the terrifying everything. All the unknown still was like, it's okay. It's all right. There's some reason. I wouldn't be able to like, I wouldn't take it away. And I think that's been a question that people have asked me, well, what would you change it? It's like, no. It's not an easy thing to say no, that I would relive all of that again just to learn what I learned. And to know people, and to like, that's where you grow from that.
I think people actually would not even ask you the question. They would assume that, of course, you wanted it to be different.
Well, I've had people ask me, and I've had people assume, know, it's human nature, it's natural, but...
And I think it's almost like everything you just said was completely true and spot on, and yet it sounds so cheap compared to the actual like...
It is.
Learning lessons, right?
No,
but
it's
like,
so
no,
cheap.
It's so much more important than that. It's so much bigger than that.
Words don't do any of it justice. Like, it's... And everyone's experience is different. I wouldn't hope that someone else would have to go through that to learn what I had to learn. But I did. And I wouldn't take it back.
And I think that you also, in doing that, carve the pathway out to that other people who are in those situations can follow. Whether or not you do that out in the world, just the fact that you healed that yourself creates the pattern in the field of consciousness that allows someone else to tap into it a little more easily.
Well, when you come up from, like, the depth of, like,
mm-hmm.
I can't go lower. This
Yeah.
is it. I can stay here, and this is my end, and it is miserable, and I leave with, I can't take it. You can say, okay, you know what? I am worth more than this. I am so much stronger than this, and this isn't me. This thing, this emotion or situation, this content isn't me. It doesn't define me. It doesn't get to be the thing that I am. When you change that, and you're like, thank you for this lesson. Thank you for showing me what I'm not. You get to then change, like, so much. And like, just, I mean, it's hard to put into words. But
I think you're doing a very good job at articulating it.
thank you.
Yeah.
Well, it's just so vague.
It is hard to... It's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just appreciate you feeling free enough to share.
It took a lot of time.
Yeah. I think it's awesome.
I think,
It's huge.
a lot of people and myself struggle with, like, what's that word? Vulnerability. It's vulnerable. It's real. It's like, oh, I'm exposing weaknesses, and not in like a make fun of myself kind of way, but like, here's a real weakness. Here's a real vulnerable thing, and I don't see it as weakness now. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, well,
It's not one.
I was going to argue against that.
I'm
but
actually-
glad
No, I
you brought
did
that
for
up.
so long. That was like a thing that I was like, that's a weakness, and it's not now.
I'm really glad you brought up vulnerability, actually, because that actually is what you feel at the gate. The pure vulnerability when you're ready to step through the gate. And do you allow it?
Yeah.
And do you move through anyway?
Yeah.
And even to the point of like, you know, like we've had conversations where like I've had like a resistance to wanting to like cry in front of you, for example. And I've been trying to want to release into that. It's because it's vulnerable. To cry is vulnerable. And so there's a sense of like, in those moments, can you say it's okay and release, or do you stay tight and constricted and guarded against it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's always beautiful, and you always are thankful to yourself for releasing when you go through that vulnerability. You're always thankful when you step through the gate.
I want to say,
It
like,
makes me so happy to hear that, man.
Yeah.
That's so fucking cool, dude. I'm so happy for you. That's awesome.
Thank you.
I think that vulnerability takes place first with yourself. For like a really long time, I just couldn't do that. And actually, that's why I've been practicing journaling again. It's like, oh, I have to be vulnerable and honest with myself. Can I do that? Like, can I write down my actual thoughts and my emotions on this page and not condemn them or judge them, but let them be there and see the way that they evolve? Like, that kind of vulnerability, like, even for me, is uncomfortable still.
Can you listen to yourself on a podcast? And
No.
You haven't
will.
watched one yet?
No, and I have.
Okay.
I explained it to Tim today, why, and I now that we have the 5th one out, I'm going to, but I had some boundaries there, so I wouldn't be mean to myself, and now I'm gonna listen to all of them. But
Good deal.
it is like that.
beautiful practice. It's a really beautiful practice to show yourself that it's okay. Even if you didn't do exactly as you wanted to do, you're still practicing being soft with yourself. Even today. So like Kylie hasn't. We went for a run today, and Kylie hasn't run in a long time.
I hate running.
And she did amazing, but she also like stopped a couple times and practiced being soft with herself
I
and
was
not
like, I'm
beating
gonna
up on herself for not doing better than anyone would have expected you. Like you did way better than you
But
can
like,
imagine.
if I was running a marathon, I wouldn't have come in first place, and I can't handle that.
I love your competitive nature, man. It's so awesome. Like, I'm not going to do this unless I win.
Stupid. It doesn't
It's not
serve
stupid.
me.
It's not stupid. It's not stupid.
It's funny now, but like,
Just like anger, there's a use in competition. There's a
Yeah.
really good something in competitive, but if it's out of balance, that's when things are an issue. Or if
Yeah.
it's coming from an ego drive or something.
but
like that.
literally today, just like giving myself the patience and being like, hey girl, it's okay that you need to walk because you're dehydrated and cramping. It's all right. you can take a couple minutes and then finish the run, or maybe you just walk the whole thing. It's okay. You're still out here. You're still doing the damn thing. Like, you're giving yourself some intention right now. Like, you're taking care of yourself. This is like, you're worth taking care of. Like, that is a good place to be. And even like, again, vulnerability, journaling, vulnerability. Can I admit that I can't finish the hour run? Yeah. Cool. All right. Take a 5-minute walk in here. It's okay.
It's the practice of self-love. It's
It
the
is
practice
not the end of the world.
of yes,
It is just a step in the
being
way.
kind to yourself, not being
Yeah.
hard on yourself, which is a release of guilt.
And like,
Let
how
it be
much
okay.
better was my day because I didn't beat myself up because I didn't run the entire time? Like, or whatever. Or because I messed up 20 sentences on a podcast. You know, it's okay.
But we still appreciated the day, all of us, in our own way. We had the sun today. It was amazingly warm for this time of year, and it was great that we all got to go out and experience it. And
Absolutely.
that's a huge part of gratitude. You know, just having the ability to do that, even though it wasn't exactly ideal. Be grateful that you were able to do it. And I know you are.
It's amazing too because there's been a couple situations where you talk about weather, and there's been a couple situations where I've been in a bad weather situation, and I'm just loving it,
Yes.
and I'm around people who are like, "This is terrible. I hate this. This is the worst. I hate this," and I'm like, "I'm having a blast."
Yeah.
Like you're holding yourself back from enjoying this thing that could be enjoyed
Yes.
because you're labeling it as bad and then not experiencing gratitude about how great it could be. I love being out in the rain. Even if it's cold sometimes. I mean, eventually, yeah, there's a point where like I need to go inside, but like being out in the elements there's something beautiful about that, and you could be grateful for that.
Was it last year that you and the boys were walking back to the house in the rain from the bar?
Yeah.
And you were just like fucking loving it.
Loving it,
and
yeah.
everyone's like bitching and pissing, and you're just like, this is great. You know, you're just so into it. You're like, the elements, let's do this. You know, I think that's awesome. I love
Yeah.
that.
But I think as you practice gratitude, you start to naturally find things to appreciate in things that you never would have appreciated in the past. And so literally, let's say that nothing changes in your life, except you now go through your same life, and every single thing that you do is now you're finding new things to appreciate that you had never seen before. It's like the before enlightenment, chop wood, or what is it? Carry water, chop wood.
Chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water.
It's the same thing,
work
but there's
with men.
a complete shift in perception and context.
That's a huge thing for me in my life too, that particular phrase, because I grew up hearing that, and it was a movie that I watched, and shout out to Patrick Shane Dorian for making the movie In God's Hands. Awesome film, really, really cool. It doesn't get enough credit, but in that movie, his friend Mickey is talking to a bunch of sailors about his character in the film, Shane Dorian, who's a world-class big wave surfer, and he goes, that son of a bitch, I'll tell you about that son of a bitch. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Kissed by nature. You know, and it's just like, that was his whole thing. You know, it's like, this is what I'm doing, and I'm intentional in my work, and I'm, you know, just in his day-to-day was just super humble and super quiet and just experiencing his life in a very, very intricate way. And I thought that was a cool movie, but I didn't understand the weight of that phrase until later on. It's not the weight so much as like how illuminating that is, to feel that way about your existence, to feel that intentional about your life, to know the path I am on is my path, and I'm grateful for this path. And I think that's just amazing. And I love that you brought that up, and I just wanted to do that.
Yeah, it's all beautiful. There's beauty to be found in everything if you look. And so it's not to say that you're not going to get stuck in cycles of, it's easy after this conversation maybe to be like, oh, when I'm going to beat up on myself when I'm not appreciative. You've turned gratitude into a goal, right? That's not the point of this. The point of this, and if you're practicing gratitude, if you're going into, I'm going to actually take this moment to like feel gratitude, and you turn it into a goal, well, you're not really connecting to the feeling anymore. You're going to run into this brick wall of trying to make yourself feel gratitude. Like I said, when I did it the first time, it's just like this, such a subtle little feeling. I couldn't even find a thing specifically to focus my gratitude on. It was just like, what does gratitude feel like? Just that open, vague question, just very ethereal, just gratitude.
Yeah.
And just sit in that. If you can keep your mind quiet and focused for 5 minutes, just sit in the feeling of gratitude. Then when you do it tomorrow, it's going to be so much easier. And before you know it, it's going to be out in the shittiest situation ever. Someone's screaming at you, yelling, and you're in the rain, and you just got into a car accident, and you're going to be like, gratitude. And you're like, oh, that's okay. Like, this is cool. Like, this is an experience that I get to have of having a car accident. Like, we're all fine, and, you know, our cars are kind of busted up, but hey, that's what insurance is for, and we get to be out in the rain, and, like, we're alive. Isn't that really cool? Like, the other person's going to look at you like you're fucking crazy.
What are you on?
I want some of that.
Well,
Get
so
some of
like
that.
to the same vein, like even today with running, like I just ran. It's like I worked out a lot before. I'm good at lifting weights and stuff. It's literally the shift. The shift isn't like that you did the workout. The shift was even when I didn't do the thing I thought I could do, or, you know, I didn't do the best, the extent of goodness that I wanted to do or whatever. I wasn't like, oh, this sucks. Like, this is the worst. I'm not doing exactly what I wanted. You know, this isn't how I pictured it. It was like, oh, I'm here. I'm doing the thing. Oh, this is where I'm at right now. It's just I had fun today doing something I hate.
Being out in the weather and feeling the sun and just moving your body and, yeah.
Like, it was
Feeling
not
primal.
about the physical action. It wasn't about how I did on the run or not. It was literally about gratitude for being in the weather, gratitude for being able to like run with you. That was so much fun. Like, and it was just fun when I was by myself walking. It was fun when we were sprinting. It was fun. It was just all fun because I wasn't being mean to myself. I wasn't holding an unrealistic expectation. I was just in the moment.
Right.
Being grateful for the experience right then and there. There was no like any other alternative or ulterior motive. It was just patience, kindness, like here right now. It was just
Be present.
Gratitude
practical.
brings you back to the present moment.
Which is real.
Presence is what is so important.
Yeah.
Like, are you here right now? Or is your conditioning taken over? And gratitude, again, secret key.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's been my focus right now. Like
It's a big
lately, I
fundamental
go
thing.
through little sprints of trying to focus on one thing.
Yeah.
Like I said, different words. Gratitude is the thing right now. It's like I super hyper specific focused on it. And it's really amazing to see how it works too. At times when I catch myself starting to fall into a spiral that isn't really comfortable, instead of, well, I got to think this through and I got to go all the way down the rabbit hole to see how deep this and try to figure it out rationally. It's like, cut it off. Okay. Gratitude. And just come back to that gratitude. And then it's like, everything's good. Everything's cool. And then later on, it's like, oh yeah, that's an easy fix. I could just do that in like 2 seconds. It didn't have to do all that pain that I thought I had to do, right?
Sometimes it's necessary, but oftentimes it's self-defeating.
It's only necessary until it's not.
Until it's
Yeah.
not. You have to decide.
Right.
That's the point. Choose.
It has a purpose. It serves to show you when you're off path.
Yes, Tim.
But it doesn't have a purpose in itself to say that you should continue feeling terrible. Suffering has an important role. That doesn't mean that you should suffer, that you should keep suffering. Suffering is showing you that you're missing something, that you're not doing something appropriately, and you need to orient yourself in a different direction.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that's a great place to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Gratitude.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight. Emotional and enlightening as always. Thank you very much for being with us, and stay tuned to get some. Jocko Willing. Shout out.
Gratitude for you guys. Gratitude for tonight. Thank you, universe. Thank you for everything that we've had here tonight, this experience, this vehicle for us to transform and evolve and hone our consciousness and feel deeper into who we are, into ourselves. Thank you for our technology, despite the fact that it kind of crapped out on us a couple times and didn't really work. But the fact that we even have computers and we can record this, and the fact that we have cameras and that we have, and we're getting better and getting new technology every time, and each podcast has been better and better and more fun and more exciting.
Yeah.
And it's just going to keep going. And just thank you all. Thank you, this house, that we have a place to do this, that we have a cool background, that we have everything. Just thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Thank you to our viewers. We do have a couple, which is amazing. Get down in the comment
16
section.
of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Get down, comment. Please have any questions that you have. Just please ask. We're happy to respond, and we look forward to hearing from y'all.
Yep. Do the whole thing. Like, share, subscribe.
Please.
You know the drill. Hit that notification bell. Helps us out to grow this channel a lot, and also, we just want to make sure that if you enjoy this content, that you're going to keep getting it, and that other people who might enjoy this content or get value out of it, that will also get value out of it. So
Absolutely.
we appreciate any support you can give us.
Thank you all very much.
Have a great night.
Bye.